Hello, White Knoll Middle School, Warhawks. Today I would take a little bit of time just to remember a very special time in our country that was very scary and affected an awful lot of people in a very short period of time. And one of the things I do whenever I become principal in a new school is I love hearing about the history of the school. And since coming here, obviously you see this great mural that is up to remember 9/11, and also we have the piece left from the fire engine that was sent to us. But many years ago, back in 2001, our school raised money to help buy a fire engine for New York after September 11th. And amazingly enough, my daughter, who is fascinated with September 11th, was born after it, like all of you were, has been amazed and fascinated with the different parts of the September 11th. And she ran into someone that I think would be very good for you to know and get to meet. And so in just a little bit, I'm going to have you see an interview my daughter did with this person to help you really understand what does September 11th represent and what we as White Knoll Middle School have done for this group of people in New York.
I am Joy Hardy, and I've been interested in 9/11 since I was about 5 years old. My first time going to New York City, I was around 6 years old, and I went and I just started getting highly interested in it. And so I did a bunch of research projects. I made a little mural thing on our wall. And then in the past year I started running more, and I saw there was a 5K in remembrance of 9/11, and I met somebody really amazing who had an amazing story. And after I finished the race I was exhausted but I talked to him, and just hearing his story was amazing, and I wanted a way that we could get to share it and get his word out there. So this is the wonderful Mr. Jimmy that I got to meet.
Good morning, students.
On September 10th, Michael went into work for a 6 p.m. to 9 a.m. shift. That would take him into the morning of September 11th. It turned out to be a godsend that at 9 a.m. Michael was actually working for another firefighter when the beginning of these events took place. And the reason why it was a godsend, because Michael was on duty, Michael had a radio. So Michael remained with the captain and the other firefighters as a group. The two guys that were off duty responded. They did everything they could to help. One of them even held the stairwell door open and would not leave until the four members of Ladder 2 got down to the bottom. And he could have left at any time. Michael had what they call house watch. House watch is a small room at the beginning of the firehouse with a computer, a TV. He had actually seen the first plane strike the towers. When the second plane, with the first plane now all sorts of calls are going out. The whole west side of Manhattan's responding. The guys on the east side are waiting. They know they're going to be needed, but they're waiting for that call. During that time, Michael's captain volunteered them to go up in a police helicopter to be lowered onto the roof. Michael's group, after the bombing that we had there in 1993, certain firefighters were trained to come in from a rooftop where they would do fire suppression to put the fire out or to rescue people off the roof. And it was at that time Michael's captain volunteered the guys that were working. NYPD came back and advised that they could not get the helicopter close enough to the roof due to the heat and smoke. So that plane was scrubbed. At that time they waited to be dispatched. When the second plane struck the South Tower, that's when they were dispatched. Their chief was actually dispatched to the north, and they do believe that Ladder 2 followed the chief to the North Tower. When Ladder 2 got stuck behind all the traffic, they could not make the South Tower. They went into the north to perform rescue operations. At that time, we learned later on that Michael went up the B stairwell and made it up as high as the 28th floor. And one gentleman that survived was coming down and said, "We need to evacuate. Come on, we gotta go." He recognized Michael's captain, and the captain stated, "We're clearing this floor, we'll be down right behind you." Now, before going in, Michael ran into a firefighter he knew, and he was the only firefighter that knew Michael that survived. And it turns out that Michael was a big hockey fan, and he loved the New York Rangers, and Billy was a big hockey fan, but he loved the Jersey Devils. And Michael's last conversation with someone that survived that we know of, Michael and Billy were arguing over who had the better hockey team. And Billy turned to Michael and said, "Keep your head down, I'll see you this weekend." Michael looked over his shoulder, smiled at Billy, and went into the North Tower. And he is the last one to see Michael. We would, after the buildings came down, we would not know for a while that Michael never made it out.
And what would be something that you would want people to remember about Michael?
That he was selfless. He was a hockey player, he was a hockey coach, he coached for 2 different high schools, he coached for a roller hockey team. And that is outside of doing his duties as a New York City firefighter. Michael, where he was working, he wasn't supposed to be, but he requested to be there and received a transfer there because it was busy, because he wanted to help people and learn.
And when he went into that World Trade Center, he had a conversation, and he didn't think anything of it. He just went in, and he was just ready to serve.
He was going in, it was another fire that they were going to put out. And if they, helped people out, they would have rescued as many people as they could. But to them, it was another job, and they were going to do what they were trained to do.
You explain to us a little bit about what a skyscraper really is.
Well, in New York, because you run out of so much ground to build buildings, it's easier to build them straight up rather than long ways. So to maximize the amount of space that the World Trade Center took up, these buildings were over 104 stories tall, which actually means they were over 1,320 feet, which is more than a quarter of a mile.
This was the Marriott, and is 22 floors, and the tallest building in South Carolina is 26 floors. They were not nearly as tall as the World Trade Centers. What was the importance of where the planes hit? How did that impact the people?
When the first plane struck the North Tower, it actually struck it high. So it allowed more people to exit that were below the damaged area, and it allowed more rescue workers to come up and help. Whereas when the second plane struck the South Tower, it hit it much lower, obstructing the escape route for many of the people that were above where it was hit.
So White Knoll Middle School raised money to send up to New York for a fire truck. What do you think that would have meant to the firefighters who sacrificed their life that day?
They would have been proud that people recognized their service. Just New York financially, besides the firefighters they lost and the damage that was caused, how many businesses were shut down. New York City lost 91 fire apparatuses, from ambulances, engines, trucks, ladder trucks, all these different ones. Heavy rescue trucks were destroyed. Another 130 were damaged. So the price tag was staggering. When an average engine could cost between $400,000 and $500,000, for the city to receive such a wonderful gift helped out the people in New York.
If there was one thing that you could tell all the students about, just one thing about 9/11 for them to remember, what would it be?
To love one another. Get rid of the hate. Look at the way these people reacted in one of the worst things that ever happened to our country. And you had heroes that were going in to save strangers.
And you never know when your last day with somebody might be, so you just got to take every day like it could be the
And
last.
tell everybody you care about I love you every chance you get.
Mm-hmm. And so, how do you hold on Michael's legacy?
By telling his story. And there's people interested like you that weren't even born when it happened, but you want to know. And this way, we learn from the past, we don't repeat it.
So what are you going to do this year to remember 9/11 and those who sacrificed their life for others? Do you live every day for yourself, or do you live for others, like the firefighters and the civilians and EMTs and police and everyone else that day who lost their life, who was so selfless? Are you going to be like them, or are you going to live for yourself?